Welcome to the MLB Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hyden. Taking a look at tonight's 7-game slate on FanDuel and DraftKings. No cores on the slate, a couple pitching options. Pretty crazy night last night, but not in like a good way.
No, there were some interesting performances. Obviously, kicked off by the Royals just going bananas in the first inning. But hopefully things settle down tonight. And I'm really glad there's no Coors on the slate because Coors is a lie.
Yeah, it really is fraud cores. But we do have a couple high-scoring games. We do have the Royals in another good spot here. Two lefties in the Rogers Center, so should be some offense spots to target here tonight.
Yeah, there's some offenses to target, and I might have a hot take or two.
Ooh, let's get ready for it. Giants and Phillies here first. Chris Stratton take on Nick Pivetta. Nick Pivetta coming off an outing where he actually got shelled against Washington. Giants here, man, they've been frustrating in this series alone.
They really have, and I think this is a decent bounce back spot for them. Like Pavetta, outside of the couple starts at the very beginning of the year, has not been very good. And if you dig into his numbers, it's kind of weird. Like dating back to last season, he struggled against lefties and had some somewhat okay numbers against righties. But like this season against right-handed hitters, like they've blasted him. So, or no, I got that backwards. He was really bad dating back to last season against righties, but lefties have blasted him this year. So I'm not quite sure what to make of that. But I think the Giants in the spot are a very interesting stack.
Yeah, I think so too, just because I think a lot of people are going to be off of them. Obviously, huge strikeout games last two nights. Nola rolled through them, but Nick Pivetta obviously not the arm. Vegas isn't giving them a ton of love, but I do like some of these bats here. Like, I don't mind like the Brandon Belt. I do actually like the righties here a little bit. I'm going to be buying into like McCutchen and Posey here tonight, and then I'll still roll with like the cheaper Brandon Crawfords and Gregor Blancos just because they're kind of a price play point.
Yeah, those guys that you mentioned are excellent options here. I really like McCutchen. If I'm gonna buy into the numbers against righties because it's a very large sample. I mean, it's dating back all the way to the last season, and McCutchen, he's generally a guy that we like to target against left-handed pitchers, but I mean, still like a 330 WOBA dating back to last season against right-handed pitching. Still some okay power against four-seam fastballs. 205 ISO, and that's a pitch that Pivetta is throwing a decent amount. Also, some good numbers against his curveball. So I really like him. Posey, as he mentioned, and then if the numbers against lefties hold true this season, where he's allowing like a 393 WOBA and a 194 ISO, that makes Brandon Belt a very interesting home run bat.
Yeah, it does. So I mean, definitely some options here. Other side of this one with the Phillies, 5-9 on DraftKings tonight. He's one of these guys I still don't know what to make of him. He's been decent. Like the numbers keep, popping up where he's solid, but for some reason, I don't believe he's as good as what he's showing. That being said, I still think he might be a viable GPP arm here tonight.
I think he is too. He's someone that there's a little bit of risk here with him. Obviously, you have to worry about like Rhys Hoskins and Cesar Hernandez and Michael Franco has been hitting pretty well recently, but like there's just not a lot of weaknesses in this guy's game. Like dating back to last season, 339 WOBA allowed to lefties, but not a lot of fly balls, not a lot of hard contact. Righties not really doing a whole lot against him. I mean, he has a 25% strikeout rate against him dating back to last season. Home runs haven't really been an issue for him. He's pitched in a couple of hitters' parks recently, and he's survived, I think, his worst game. Was against the Dodgers. He went like 1 1/3 and got shelled, but like only gave up 3 against Atlanta, who's a team that has a ton of power. I don't know. I think this is a viable spot against him. Like if you look, I mean, the only games he's really struggled in are against the Dodgers. And like I know the Phillies have been a little bit better recently, but they're still striking out 27% of the time, and he's cheap, so I think he's viable.
Yeah, he's definitely a viable SP2. Like you said, Phillies just do strike out a ton, and there is some strikeout upside. And obviously, I think, the one area that I was concerned with was mainly just the walks, especially the left-handers up over, 11% dating back to last year. But Phillies might only actually have a few in here.
Yeah, and like the walks, not as bad this season. Like I know he still had a couple games, but it hasn't been a huge issue this season.
No, it's mainly just against the lefties. So if Phillies, roll out just, Herrera, Hernandez, and Santana, and that's it. Nothing I'm tremendously worried about.
Yeah, for sure. I think the only person we really have to worry about is Rhys Hoskins, and you and I were kind of talking about it a little bit prior to recording. Hoskins has been cooling off recently because pitchers have stopped throwing him fastballs, and they're throwing him a lot of sliders, and he's struggling with that pitch. Unfortunately, Stratton, not a guy that throws that slider very often, only 16% of the time to righties this season. So hopefully he relies on it a little bit more whenever he's facing Hoskins, or he's probably going to, hit one out of the yard here.
It's true. And Hoskins always guy I'll have interest in GPP just because he has that, double dong potential.
Yeah, for sure.
So, was there anyone else that caught your eye on Philly's side?
Caesar's always a viable cash game option, especially on a night like tonight where second base is pretty gross.
Yeah. Kansas City, Baltimore. Speaking of gross, two pitchers on the slate: Andrew Cashner, Eric Skoglund. Although, Jesus, as bad as Baltimore is, I think any pitcher can be a viable GPP arm against them now.
Yes. I actually wrote up Skoglund as a viable GPP SP2 because the Orioles are just so freaking bad. And I know they put up 7 runs last night, but it was only a couple bats that really did much of anything. And one of them was Chris Davis, and you don't really expect him to do that in a lefty on lefty matchup. I don't know. This is a spot where either something's going to have to give. Skoglund's either going to stop being completely terrible, or the Orioles are going to stop being completely terrible. There's not really any other outcome that could happen here. So Skoglund, there's risk. He is giving up 44% hard contact and a 395 WOBA to righties, but there's potential for him to put up a decent game.
There is, just as bad as Baltimore is. I will say Jonathan Scope is probably my favorite bat on the slate. Obviously against a lefty where he's been very solid. 394 WOBA, 268 ISO, but his numbers off curveballs are absolutely insane, which is something Skoglund throws quite a bit. 404 WOBA, 290 ISO, 53% hard contact dating back to 2016.
Yeah, he's a little bit concerning, and if you're stacking Baltimore, I will say you would probably want to start with him. And Adam Jones is kind of below average against left-handed pitching, dating back to last season, 306 WOBA, 314 on base percentage. But Skoglund's throwing a two-seam fastball a decent amount, and Adam Jones a 625 ISO against that pitch last season. So he would be a guy that I would have interest in. And then obviously Machado, who has not had a slate-breaking game in a while, against a lefty, yeah, that could be problematic.
Yeah, and I still like Trey Mancini leading off. Continues to both solid numbers against lefties. If you want to get weird, there are still guys like Danny Valencia and if Mark Trumbo's back in the lineup again, I'm okay with using those guys in GPPs because, the potential's there. It's just they're so boom or bust.
Yeah, and I really like Valencia on FanDuel at 2,300. You can use him in that first base or utility spot. He's a great value bat. And then you mentioned Trumbo, another guy you can consider.
Yep. Then we get to the Kansas City side here. If you look Cashner's a guy kind of limits both sides of the plate dating back to last year. 2018 alone, 388 WOBA to lefties, 293 ISO, 28% ground ball rates. There's definitely potential for the lefties here to go ham again.
There's potential for everybody to go ham here. Even his numbers against righties, 335 WOBA allowed this season, 205 ISO allowed. Average exit velocity, almost 91 miles an hour, 35% fly balls. There's potential for just about everyone to go ham. I think Lucas Duda is one of my favorite options. Cashner's two-seam fastball this season, he's allowing a 370 ISO with that pitch to lefties. Duda mashes that pitch, 236 ISO against it. I really, really like him tonight. And then other guys like Alex Gordon, a great spot for him, and Moustakas, a lot of power, especially in this park.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned obviously the righties. Perez is always going to be a guy with some catching pop. I do like Soler and Whit Merrifield as well, two guys that actually hit sinkers fairly well. And Soler's contact rate against sinkers up over 80%, which is always a nice sign for him.
Yeah, because he's a guy that's usually like strikeout or bust, and if he's actually making decent contact, that's a huge boon to his potential. And we saw it last night against a righty. He's able to go yard there. And I like him here. These Kansas City bats are not terribly expensive. Like if you're wanting to pay up for two pitchers tonight, which is a very viable strategy, you can still get like, especially on DraftKings, like Perez 3,700. That's a little pricey for a catcher, but Duda, Mustakis, Alex Gordon, these guys not expensive.
No, definitely not. Boston, New York next here. Masahiro Tanaka taking on Rick Porcello. David Price scratch from this one. I don't mind Rick Porcello again here tonight. I still feel like people aren't completely buying into what he's doing this year, and he's definitely changed and kind of gone back to his Cy Young ways.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the Red Sox for ruining all the work that I put into writing up the Yankees against David Price. Thanks, guys. I don't really want to pick on Porcello here. If you dig into the numbers, like, I mean, 2.14 ERA, 46 strikeouts, and 46 innings this season, 0.82 whip. Like the indicators, like his xFIP and Sierra, not terribly different from his season long ERA. Like suggesting like he's actually been good and not just lucky. He's abandoned his like four seam fastball. He's relying more on that sinker and a slider. He shut down the Yankees last time. Like I think this is a spot where he could go out and actually put up a decent game, and he's not terribly expensive. Like I do have some concern because his career numbers at Yankee Stadium are not that great, just 5.14 ERA, but there's not a lot of bats in here that I worry about except for maybe the lefties.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's mainly just because there's more of a fly ball chance and hard contact still coming to lefties. So like I'm okay with like DD here or Gardner if you want, but overall Gardner hasn't been great this year. You mentioned that sinker, like generating a 58% ground ball rate against right-handers this year, 0.22 ISO allowed. Strikeout stuff is definitely there for some potential here tonight. Obviously, the Yankees do strike out quite a bit, and Porcello has shown, 26% strikeout rate this year. So I don't mind him. He's definitely in a spot. I do think he's cash viable even against this Yankees lineup tonight.
I think so too, and he's probably one of my top pitchers. Like as far as like if I'm not paying all the way up for Corbin or like Gio, like you get a pretty nice discount on Porcello on DraftKings and over on FanDuel as well. You get a pretty nice discount.
Yeah, like you said, it's the lefty bats I'm more interested in here.
Didi and Gardner would be the two guys that I would look at the most, but I'm not terribly intrigued outside of like Didi as a one-off.
Oh. Boston side of things here, obviously Boston struck out quite a bit last night. I don't have a ton of interest in Tanaka, even though he's fairly cheap. Do you?
No, I really don't. Like digging into it, like he's throwing splitters and sliders a decent amount this season, and that can be problematic against this Boston offense. So I'm not really looking to go here. And Vegas has not really adjusted for I think the pitching change, and they still have the Yankees pretty heavy favorites last time I checked. It's a little concerning, obviously, but it does look like that Boston run line is starting to climb a little bit. So I think people are catching on that Tanaka may struggle here.
Yeah, and you mentioned like splitters and sliders. It's basically all this guy throws now. Against splitters, there's a couple of bats that do stand out in a fairly limited sample size, just because the splitter's not a huge pitch around the league. But both Hanley Ramirez and JD Martinez over 300 ISO against the pitch dating back to last year. You look, a lot of the right-handed power has come from the right side. 220 ISO allowed this year for Tanaka.
Yeah, those are two bats I really like. And then if you look, that slider that he's also throwing a decent amount, almost 38%. You look in like Benintendi, JD Martinez, you already mentioned, has great numbers against it. Jackie Bradley Jr., good numbers against it. There's a bunch of Boston guys that do actually stand out as good options here, and I don't think they're going to be a very, very popular stack.
No, and this is a spot I don't mind Mookie either. Like, I know he's 5,800, and we were bitching about Trout's price last night, and I'm not being a homer here, but I just think there's so much potential. Like, he's so dialed in. This is a great ballpark for him to hit in as well. He's got that potential, I think, for a double homer night as well, or three.
He's one of the best hitters in baseball at this point in the season. Like, he's one of the hottest and best hitters in baseball, so I don't necessarily mind it. Yeah, there's really not much you can say. Like he's just seeing beach balls, so sure.
Yeah. Seattle, Toronto next year. Two lefties on the hill. Jaime Garcia taking on Wade LeBlanc. Definitely have more interest in the Seattle side of things here as far as bats go.
Yeah, my hot take is I actually think Wade LeBlanc could be a viable option here tonight. We talked about Josh Donaldson yesterday, not looking completely healthy. He had another 0 for 5 night with two strikeouts last night. Donaldson and Smoke are really the only bats that you really worry about in this lineup against lefties. Like there's a couple other guys, but I think LeBlanc is someone that if he goes 80 pitches tonight, which there's a decent chance he does, he could go 5+ innings, get in line for a win. Like I think he's a very very viable SP2 option.
And I'm going to say about Paxton, remember how we talked about the 60% fastball rate? I guess when he's dialing up at 100 in like the eighth and ninth inning, it's okay.
Yes.
But yeah, LeBlanc, I think my only concern here is there's a couple bats that handle the changeup pretty well, and there are some power numbers against the changeup from those first four hitters, which are the guys you're worried about. Um, I don't know. He's like limited damage, like 115 ISO to righties. This season, I still think that something's off there, just because the hard contact rate 37%. So I'm a little worried, but I can see it.
I mean, it's just one of those things. Like he's just really cheap. Like I mean, he's 4,500 because he's still like a relief pitcher over on DraftKings, and he's a guy that has potential to put up a decent outing here. Like there's strikeout upside in the spot for sure.
And Seattle side of things here, like I love the stack here tonight. Probably my favorite stack on the board. Garcia is a guy who just hasn't been great dating back to last year. 181 ISO to righties, 200 ISO to lefties. Obviously a ground ball guy, but there's a lot of guys that hit the sinkers well and get some fairly decent lift on it too.
Yes, this is my absolute favorite stack of the night. There are a lot of bats that I really, really, really like here. Talking about like Nelson Cruz against a lefty. He's not very expensive. He's 4,200 on DraftKings. He's like 3,700 on FanDuel. Like, come on, in a hitter's park. Yeah, that's not going to end up well for Jaime Garcia, and he's mashed sinkers dating back to 2016, 245 ISO, 40% hard contact. Good spot for him. Ryan Healy is one of my favorite first base options on the slate if I'm not going with like Lucas Duda. Great spot against Garcia here. And then the rest of these guys like Haniger has crushed southpaws, 219 ISO against him. I'm sure you probably want to talk about Kyle Seager in this spot.
He almost did it yesterday, man. I was so like, he had like two barrel alerts that popped up, and I was like, man, they're like 70% plus hit probabilities. I was bummed, but yeah, he's a guy sinkers. I mean, gets a ton of lift, only a 39% ground ball rate, distance 309, 406 WOBA, 252 ISO against the pitch. Seager's always been kind of like an average bat against lefties. He's not just a complete lost cause up there, so I don't mind him here in this spot. No one's going to look his way on out of this lineup.
No, he's one guy that I think is very interesting because Garcia, dating back to last season, has actually really struggled against lefties with 1.6 homers per nine allowed and a 332 WOBA allowed. Good spot for Seager. And then like Robbie Cano, just because second base is putrid today, has some value in this spot. But anybody in this lineup, Heredia, if he makes a lineup, I love Zunino again in the spot. He mashes sinkers as well, 221 ISO against him, and he went yard last night. Great spot for him too.
Yeah, stack him up here. Back to Toronto side real quick. Like it's Donaldson and Smoke, the people that I'm looking at here. Although Solarte is somewhat interesting if you don't want to pay all the way up for a Donaldson at third base.
Yeah, Solarte is a little bit interesting. I don't know. I'm taking a wait and see approach on Josh Donaldson. Like I can't pay 4,800 for a guy that I don't think is healthy.
Yeah, I mean, totally understandable. And he's not that cheap on FanDuel anymore. He was like 3,500 there the other day.
Yeah, like I know he had a couple good games. Cleveland against Cleveland whenever he
the doubleheader.
Yeah, whenever he came back, but like those were like wind blowing out games as well. Like I don't know if that had something to do with it, but I still don't think Donaldson is healthy.
Next one here, you got Julio Teheran versus Ryan Yarbrough. Teheran, definitely interesting here, 8,900.
I guess we have to buy in. Like I don't know. I don't know what to say at this point. Like he's been pitching out of his mind. I mean, outside of what like a bad game against Philly, and a bad two bad games to start the season. Like he's carried a couple no hitters into like 7 innings or something like that against the Mets, and like he's been pitching better. Strikeout rate is up. This Rays team, now that they're back at home, not nearly as scary as they were whenever they were on the road in like Baltimore. I think this is a spot where like I'm buying into Tehran at 8,900 on DraftKings. Like that's a pretty fair price.
Yeah, I'm using them here. Like probably don't plan on paying down a whole lot as far as my SP2 goes. So I think I'm going to be looking at like him and Porcello as a decent combo with a fair amount of strikeout upside. You look at some of these lefty bats in here, which is usually the concern. None that I'm too afraid here, like back at home, like you mentioned, like a ballpark there obviously sucks for hitters. What happened yesterday? Heckavaria took a ball off something that like hit him in the eye. Like the stadium is like Bad News Bears.
I did not see that.
Yeah, it was wild. Tehran's an option here. Like the strikeout upside's there. I don't mind him in cash, like his SP2.
And even on like FanDuel, he's like 7,400. That's pretty darn cheap. They like
Yeah.
the only bet I worry about is the Malik Smith revenge game.
I don't know if you're being serious.
No, I wasn't. I was not.
It's that awkward silence, like, oh my God, is he serious?
No, I was not serious. Like, no.
Yeah, just a ton of strikeouts here. I kind of like the Atlanta bats on this side. That'll maybe go overlooked. Although Yarbrough's not that bad. I just don't know how long he's going to go.
Yeah, he's not like if you look, it has not been terrible by like any stretch of the imagination. But this Braves team is like the best team in baseball against left-handed pitching. Like 16% strikeout rate, 129 WRC plus, like 182 ISO, 36% hard contact rate. There's a lot of guys in this lineup that are really, really good against left-handed pitching. And that starts with Kurt Suzuki, who, like, when there's a lefty on the mound, it's just like you might as well be pitching beach balls to him because the dude just mashes 368 ISO dating back to last season, 475 WOBA, 7% strikeout rate. Like, if you're not paying for Salvador Perez, Kurt Suzuki is probably the second best pitcher on this or catcher on the slate.
Yeah. I really like Freddie Freeman here as well because Yarbrough's been worse off against lefties so far. Obviously not a huge sample size just given he's been a reliever, but 304 ISO to lefties dating back to last year, 323. Obviously it has a strikeout stuff, 31%, but 64% fly ball rate to lefties. And Freeman's obviously a guy who handles lefties fairly well, 247 ISO dating back to last year, 378 WOBA, still over a 70% contact rate. Like I'm not shying away from Freeman here despite lefty.
Free money Freeman. It is a very good spot for him. He mashes sinkers too, 271 ISO against the pitch. Great spot for him. No one's going to use him tonight. Like no one's going to use Freddie Freeman. Guys like Johan Camargo, Ozzy Albies. Camargo is a great value option. And then of course Albies just rakes against lefties. So I really, really like the Braves bats here. And even Acuna, like not a large sample size, only 16 at bats, but 250 ISO, 373 WOBA, 47% or 53% fly ball rate. It's pretty darn good.
Yeah, and making a ton of contact as well.
Yeah, and don't forget about Markakis. Just because it's lefty on lefty, he does have some decent numbers against lefties as well.
Yeah, so yeah, Braves should be an underrated stack here tonight.
Very much so.
Washington, San Diego, Joey Lucchesi taking on Gio Gonzalez. I don't mind Gio here, although I don't love him at 11.4. I think I'm going to be kind of looking at like Porcello and Tehran a little bit more. But I still think he is viable, obviously, in GPPs.
There's a lot of strikeout potential here for him. Like he's a guy who struck out 23% of batters faced dating back last season. Padres striking out 26% of the time. Gonzalez has done a good job of limiting runs, like 1 run allowed over his like last 12 innings. Like his one blowout game, like he struggled against the Giants a little bit. Struggled on that chalk night against the Rockies, but has been pretty darn solid for the majority of the season. Outside of one or two bats, you're not really worried about a whole lot of these Padres guys. So Gio is again another one of these really good arms at the top. Double digit salary guys that I think is viable today.
You mean outside of Christian Villanueva?
What's that?
You said just outside of Christian Villanueva, that's the only guy you're worried about here.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, like he's the only guy I'd have interest in just because his numbers obviously are still absurd against lefties.
Yeah, I mean 51% or 51 plate appearances, still 646 ISO against them. That's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, outside that, no interest in any of the Padres bats.
Maybe a Rafi Lopez. That'd be about it.
Washington side of things here, Lucchesi, not a bad arm, 26% strikeout rates. Guy doesn't walk a ton of guys as well. Is your confidence a little bit waned after last night?
A little bit, but like I didn't have a lot of interest in picking on Lucchesi anyways. Before I saw last night's Nationals just kind of really suck. If it's anybody, it's going to be Rendon, Zimmerman, guys that hit sinkers pretty well. Maybe Matt Wieters if he's in the lineup. Again, a guy that hits sinkers pretty well, but I'm not too excited about the Nationals here.
No, I'm not either. It's weird. He only throws a sinker and a curve.
Yeah.
So, and none of these guys particularly hit curveballs really well outside of like Michael Taylor.
Yeah, he's a little bit interesting just because he also hits sinkers pretty well.
Yeah. I kind of mind like Lucchesi taking the flyer on him in GPPs.
You could. It would be a very low owned spot. Like, I mean, I know he struggled against the Dodgers in that Mexico game, but like it was pouring rain whenever he was pitching. So like I'm gonna give him a pass on that.
Yeah, I mean, outside that, he's been pretty solid. He's only 7,200 on DK, where it's, I really only look to use him just because Tehran's so cheap on FanDuel. But there is some strikeout upside here.
There is some interesting. There is a little bit of upside here.
So, like you said, it's probably Rendon here that I'd take a shot on.
Yeah, Rendon, Zimmerman, Taylor.
Yeah. Arizona and LA, Patrick Corbin take on Alex Wood. Alex Wood, 7,600. Patrick Corbin, 13.3. Both these guys have kind of a similar thing to talk about here, which is a little bit of a velocity drop.
Yeah, Wood's velocity may be explainable because he's been battling some issues with his hamstring. And that might explain some of his velocity issues, but like it hasn't really stopped him from being an effective pitcher for the majority of this season. Like still a very, very low whip, 0.93 whip, and he shut down the Diamondbacks last time out. Like I think I'm tired of talking about the Dodgers and Diamondbacks pitchers because this has been like they've faced each other like 54 times already this season, and we're only a month and a half in. I think Alex Wood is a very, very viable SP2 option tonight. Like there's strikeouts available in that lineup. Not a lot of bats that I'm really concerned about outside of like Goldschmidt and AJ Pollock, who is apparently like stolen the powers of Babe Ruth, but like they're still striking out like 26% of the time against lefties. So there's some value, I think, in Alex Wood tonight.
Yeah, and this is the cheapest he's been facing a Diamondbacks team. He's put up 21 DK points and 14 DK points. Be very happy with either of those. Like even if he had 15 fantasy points, like at 7,600, it's fine as an SP2. Like you said, the only bats I'm worried about here is Babe Ruth and Paul Goldschmidt. And outside that, like I'm fine. Like I know he's coming off the hamstring, making his first start from the DL, but I'm okay with them. I feel like the Dodgers would take a wait and see approach because they're usually pretty cautious with pitcher injuries.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and those would be the only two bats I'd have interest in.
Yeah, like I had to force myself to write them up in the cheat sheets today because I was like, when I saw these two pitchers, I was like, I don't really care about any of these bats. And then I was like, well, I guess I could put like Goldschmidt and Pollock in there, but like there's nobody in this lineup that I'm really interested in. Like Wood is throwing that knuckle curve like 27% of the time. Diamondbacks just don't hit it. There's only two hitters in that lineup with a contact rate above 80%. two hitters with a whiff rate below 20%. Yeah, I just don't.
No. Patrick Corbin on the other side, 13-3. I know he had, 12 strikeouts against his Dodgers team earlier this year. He's obviously thrown that slider a ton, 37%. Dating back to last year, 47% whiff rate on it. But I don't know. I feel like he could do well here. I don't want to pay 13-3.
I don't mind it. Like it's one of those situations where like I don't necessarily need salary because there's enough value out there to get pretty much anybody that I want. He has a ton of strikeout upside. I mean, it's 34% strikeout rate this season. I know dating back to last season, it's only like 23.8%. So I don't expect that 34% rate to continue, but like he has 8 strikeouts in all but 2 of his games this season, at least 8. There's potential for him to go deep in this game and pitch really well. I think if you want to roll him out, feel free. Like he's not my favorite top arm, but I don't have any issues paying that price for him in this spot.
I mean, because he's throwing that slider so much, like 38% this year, and the highest contact rate guy is Austin Barnes at 73%. The rest of these guys are very low. The strikeout upside, there's no one hits sliders particularly well outside of like Bellinger when he makes contact, but I'm not taking lefty against Corbin.
No, I wouldn't either. Like the only guys that I would even consider, Chris Taylor and Kike Hernandez, maybe Matt Kemp if like you're just trying to be contrarian, but like I'm not dying to roster any of these guys.
No, I'm not either. Home run calls, who do you got tonight?
Nelson Cruz and the dude.
Ooh, I'm going to go Jonathan Scope and Ryan Healy.
Going with an Orioles hitter. That's ballsy.
Hey, Scope is one of the better Orioles hitters.
That's really saying something.
That's it for us. We'll be back here tomorrow with a fairly large Thursday slate. You can head over to dailyfantasycafe.com, check out our tools and content, and good luck.
Good luck tonight.